Okay, so welcome everybody. This is an hour-long training on Tier 1 social emotional behavioral supports that are not only offered throughout the district, but some suggestions and some information that you might find helpful. My name is Jonathan Logan. I am a lead psychologist with the school district. I am beginning my 30th year with the district, and I have two roles and responsibilities. One is I work with David Weber in terms of coordinating our the Clovis Unified Wellness Project, and then I also provide mental health support at Gateway High School.
Thanks, John. I'm David Weber, one of the lead psychologists, and this is my 25th year in Clovis Unified, and I spent 7 years in Fresno Unified before that. And I am very fortunate this year to have a full-time commitment to the CUSD Comprehensive Wellness Project. So feel very fortunate and very excited about that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jill Duran. I have been a school psychologist in the district for about 15 years, and just this last year, I served as one of the full-time mental health support providers for the Clovis High area. So I work with teams at both Clark and Clovis High School. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Quinette Swank. I am a school psychologist in the district. This is my 6th year, and I support Red Bank Elementary and Clovis Community Day School, and I'm happy that you are all here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tammy Kent. I am an instructional coach in curriculum and instruction. I specialize in the area of multi-tiered systems of support for academics, behavior, and social emotional, any sort of support system that we need for students. And I work with schools to help implement those systems of support. I've been a teacher. This is my 20th year. And I have credentials in general education as well as special education. So I have a heart for both, but I also love adult education. So I'm happy to be here with you today.
So if my mathematics skills are accurate, there's about 95 years of experience in this little small get-together that we're having today. So go ahead and flip the slide, Tammy. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about tiers of support and some resources that might be available to you in terms of working with kids from a social emotional behavioral perspective. Over the last year or so, there was a small group of us that had gotten together and met pretty regularly over the span of about 6 to 8 months, developing not only, researching not only effective practices in the area of social emotional learning, but then also in terms of coming up with what resources are actually out there, and basing that on maybe an individual school, an individual area, and then also the district at large. There are a lot of supports in place in Clovis Unified. We will be addressing that throughout the next 45 to 50 minutes. And we'll give you a little bit of a reference on that 3-tiered model through MTSS. Just kind of the basic premise is, as a district, we believe in meeting the academic, behavioral, social, emotional needs of all students through a multi-tiered system system of supports. And I said this is the second time we've done the training today. I said earlier this morning that, you know, a few years ago, a lot of us were going to different trainings or just making sure that we were more aware of the field of trauma. And at that time, Danny Munster, who's one of the transition coordinators for the Clovis West area, was doing a presentation, talked a little bit about sometimes the different perspective that we have between academic skills and behavior. And he kind of just referenced, like, you know, if we've got a kid who's struggling with reading, what do we do? Well, we'll go back and we'll try some different things. We might do some small group instruction, but we'll look for opportunities to help in terms of increasing that skill within that student. And we do very similar things with the areas of mathematics, writing, and other topics as well. But sometimes when kids come and they have some behavioral challenges, we look at it much differently. And so we might challenge you a little bit to look at it as though that, yeah, behavior could be a performance type of an issue, but it may also be a skill issue as well. There are kids that don't come with those skills that maybe other kids have. And maybe we should be looking at this from a little bit of a different lens, like that academic lens, in terms of what can we do to help students who may be struggling in terms of following directions, keeping up with the pace, and then maybe, exhibiting maybe behaviors that are disruptive or even aggressive, those types of things as well. So, Tammy, it's a little bit fancier than it was this morning. And so we talked about the three-tiered model, right? We've heard terms like response to intervention, RTI squared, multi-tiered systems of support. And so we talked about like the three tiers, and basic premise of it, whether it's academic or social emotional behavioral, is that tier one, those are things that will primarily happen within the classroom that really meet the needs of a wide range of students. And as we go through this again today, this is not about putting pressure on teachers, but really kind of like emphasizing the importance of those tier one supports, and then acknowledging that for those kids who struggle, that there are other supports that are out there that will provide, that might meet the needs of that one individual student. So we are not in any way, shape, or form inferring that this is your guys' responsibility. It's our collective responsibility. But from the tier one perspective, those things that happen within the classroom, what can we do to help students be successful? And we know that within that tier one support, again, it's in the classroom and accessible to most students. Tier one is really set up for those kids that where tier one supports are not sufficient for them, or they're not benefiting from that level of support. And when we look at tier two, we're looking at, that generally looking at like 15% of our students. So if you were a elementary school teacher and you had a class full of maybe 30, 35 students, we're looking at supports for maybe 4, 5, 6 of your students in the classroom, doing like that. But then tier two is not always sufficient, does not always meet the needs of our students. Sometimes their needs are greater than that. And we also have tier three supports, which is really kind of identified as those supports that maybe 5% of your students would need. So about 1 in 20. So you might have 1 or 2 kids in a class that might need that level of support. And it's really matching the level of support and the type of support to the needs of that individual student. Here are some examples that we have in our district. The tier one is, again, those school-wide expectations. There's lots of things that we can do at a classroom level to help students to be successful. Those things may vary school to school or area to area. We would encourage you to, reach out to your school psychologist, the vice principal, the principal, even your area superintendent, in terms of like, what resources do we actually have for our students at a tier one level in that social emotional behavioral domain. But some of the things we want to do is work on like classroom management, making sure that we're acknowledging positive behavior. There's the idea that for every kind of consequential comment or interaction, we want to have 4 positive interactions. Building routines, consistency, making sure that accountability is clear and concise. So those are all things that we can do within the classroom, and each teacher can have their own classroom management system. Tier two, in our district, we have transition teams. Second step, we have Clovis support and intervention, CSI. We have other social emotional learning groups, check-in, check-out, group behavioral supports, and then even behavioral labs. And again, that is that one tier that is kind of identified as meeting the needs of like 15% of our students. And then tier three, and a lot of the work that we've done in the wellness project is both at the second tier and the third tier, is we have a behavior consultation team. Many of you may have already had some involvement with that team. We have psychologists and behavior consultants that will work with teams in terms of supporting kids that have those disruptive, maybe even aggressive behaviors. The premise being is that if their behavior is impacting their own learning or the learning of others, would be something to do. We consult, we provide direct support. We have behavior consultants that can come into classrooms and work with kids directly to kind of, teach those requisite skills. And that's one tier three support. We also have mental health support providers. And so Dave, like I did this morning, I'll defer to you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, the district, through the LCAP stakeholder process, identified a need in terms of additional mental health supports at the secondary level. And so for 2 years, we had our mental health support providers working 2 days a week. We had one person per area serving the middle school and high school. And clearly was not enough support. And so this last year, we were very fortunate that the district made the decision to provide a full-time mental health support provider at each one of our 7 through 12 campuses. And so their role there is to collaborate with the admin team, school counseling team, transition counselors, SRLs, to really identify those students on campus who have needs and to develop a really strong tier 1 system. So a lot of the things we're talking about here today, and then they also are heavily involved in the tier 2 and tier 3 supports. But the biggest part of their job is really just networking and building the capacity of that entire team at those sites to meet the social emotional needs of students.
And then the last one on the slide is 3 terms. One is a behavior support plan, BSP, FBA, which is a functional behavioral analysis, and then a BIP, which is a behavior intervention plan. A BIP is a kind of a more severe, more intensive plan than a behavior support plan. And a lot of that does revolve around those of us that work in the world of special education. But really, even in general ed, we have certainly develop behavior support plans for those kids as well, if we think that that's appropriate. And so I would again encourage you to know that there are supports out there in our district at all 3 levels. We're going to talk about that a little bit for the next 30 to 40 minutes. And there are similarities throughout our district, but there are certain things that are unique to each school. So I would say talk to your site administration or other people on your site to kind of identify what supports you guys actually have. Next slide. So, what do students need? That's okay. We're gonna give you a little bit of an idea of what's moving ahead forward. But what do students need to access learning? And David's going to go into this in more detail. Safety, feeling of connectedness, those types of things. Really what we found is that students are, it is very important and beneficial for students to have that one person that they feel like they could connect to. And that person that they have the most access to is their classroom teacher. And so what we want to do is set that groundwork for safety, connectedness, that relationship building. And then if that one individual student or a group of students, if their needs go beyond that in terms of making sure that we're accessing those resources that are appropriate for them. So with that, I'm gonna turn this over to David.
Yeah, thanks, John. So before we dive deep into the topic of Tier 1 Social Emotional MTSS, it's important that we lay some groundwork. So you can see on your screen 3 really important concepts that we want to spend a couple of minutes talking about. The first bullet, you must take care of yourself in order to be the best you can for your students. You know, when we talk about self-care, it sounds so cliche and it's an overused statement, but it is incredibly important. You know, we've all decided to pursue a career in education, and even at the best of times, this is a very challenging job. And, you know, right now it's particularly challenging. We're all going back on the 17th to a virtual world with students, and there will be specific challenges, some of which we will talk about today, that we will need to meet in terms of the social emotional needs of students. But it's absolutely critical that we take care of ourselves first. And, you know, the notion behind that is that we live within a culture in Clovis Unified where a lot of it is expected of us. Our community expects a lot out of us. Our community expects the very best for their children, as they should. And for us to be able to provide that, we have to take care of ourselves first. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't do those things that are expected of us in our roles as educators. So don't feel selfish. Don't feel like you're focusing on self when you take time on an ongoing basis. And we're not talking about, you know, I can't wait until next summer. That's when I'm going to focus on self-care, or Saturday. We're talking about every day. And so finding those things you can do every day that help take care of you is absolutely critical. And I know it sounds strange that we're focusing on ourselves right now when we're really focusing on tier 1 social emotional supports for students. But again, we can't meet their needs until we meet our needs. So for us to be the very best we can be, to serve them the very best we can, we have to take care of ourselves. And that's different for each of us. Each of us has different things that we do, to take care of ourselves. The one thing I can think of that I've done already today is taking my dog for a walk early in the morning. And, just being out and it was kind of cool air this morning, believe it or not, at 5:30 a.m. But just being with my dog, and it gives me a chance to sort of get grounded for the day, organize my thoughts, kind of think about what's going on. But it just, it's good for me. It's healthy for me. It feels good. So don't neglect this. Make sure that you have some things that you're doing on an ongoing basis. And we're going to challenge you as a group of facilitators. We're going to challenge you at the very end today. We're going to ask you, via the chat, what you guys do to take care of yourselves. And it's interesting. We'll see a whole lot of different things that we do. And it's always interesting to share those ideas, because we can learn from other people things that may resonate with us that we can incorporate in what we're doing for self-care. So take care of yourself first. The second bullet, understand that many of our students are struggling emotionally from the impact of COVID-19. Jill's going to go into this in much more detail in a few minutes. But remember, the impact to our kids is the loss of loved ones that may be in the hospital or suffering at home with COVID-19. There's all the anxiety and depression out there because of the isolation and the unpredictability of what school's going to look like, let alone life. And then there's the economic impact that many of our families are experiencing. So just know that the emotional struggles that we would typically see are going to be magnified when we come back. And again, we're going to talk about some of the things we can do to address that. And then finally, a critical part of Tier 1 social emotional support is the atmosphere that is created in the learning environment by teachers. How do you set the tone? So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is models, programs, curriculum, strategies, interventions, and all those are incredibly important. But the foundation of all of that is a mindset. It's an approach. And so it's not only about the doing, it's about the being. And so although much of what we're going to share is the what, I want to talk a little bit about the how we do that. So I'm going to read this quote because I think it's a powerful quote. I don't remember where I pulled this from, but it was from some social emotional MTSS guru. So the core fundamentals of social emotional MTSS are implemented in the classroom level for all students. In other words, our classroom teachers who are on the front lines every single day are in the best position to effectively implement these fundamentals, which all revolve around the teacher leader creating a learning environment where kids feel safe, welcomed, comfortable, cared for, connected, and have at least one adult they can openly share with. So again, when you look at a lot of the research on Tier 1 social emotional MTSS, not only does it talk about the what in terms of the interventions and the strategies, the things you can do on a day-to-day basis, but there is a big focus on the how. And these are what I would conceptualize as the how. These don't cost us anything. They don't involve a fancy curriculum or expensive materials. These are things that come from the heart, that come from the soul. These are the things that we as good educators are mindful of when we're working with our students. So we know if students walk onto campus feeling safe, if they feel like they're in a safe environment, if they feel welcomed, which is that sense of I belong here, I'm wanted here. And I go back and think about my experience in high school and certain classrooms where I walked in, I did not feel welcomed at all. Other classrooms, I did feel very welcomed. And part of that challenge virtually is welcoming kids. The really nice thing is as they join your Zoom meetings or whatever platform you're using, their names pop up. So the cool thing is you'll be able to address them by name, and that little gesture there can create a strong sense of being welcomed. Being comfortable is that sense of fit. Being cared for. Do you have that sense that you are cared for? Does this teacher care about me? And again, as we look at these first 4 bullets that we've talked about, these aren't something that we can learn in a training. These aren't something that we can read a book about. This is really going to our heart, what drew us to this field, what called us to this field, and the ongoing work that we do in terms of our passion for helping kids. The next bullet being connected. Doc didn't use the term extracurricular. And back when Doc coined the term co-curricular, his idea was that, kids need to be connected with a lot of different things. And those different things they're connected with aren't in addition to. It's part of the curriculum. And so whether that be sports or color guard, clubs, even things that kids are involved in outside of school are all absolutely critical. And so the last one there is having at least one adult they can openly share with, okay? And so these items, kids feeling safe, feeling welcome, feeling comfortable, feeling cared for, feeling connected, and having at least one adult they can openly share with are absolutely critical components in the how of implementing best practice Tier 1 social emotional MTSS.
All right, thanks, David. So as David mentioned briefly, what are some challenges that kids are going to be coming to into your virtual classrooms as a result of this pandemic? Maybe what challenges you've experienced with in your personal life or friends and family. So just to be mindful of these things as they start on August 17th. Illness of a parent, a death of a friend or family member, the economic hardship due to the parent or caregiver losing their job, or perhaps, if they own a salon and they're having to shut down, so maybe there's no income or having to be put on unemployment for the time being. All of those challenges I know you guys know about. We're hearing about it on the news. And abuse and violence and neglect. And of course, this is a big one because as we know, students often will report things to us as educators about what may be going on in the home and them not feeling safe in the home environment. And so there's a likelihood that as school starts that these things may come up. And so we need to be just mindful of the experiences that kids may be having as they enter our virtual classrooms. And then just the stress and anxiety from the disruption of the routine and that instability that they've had for so long, just like we've felt with the uncertainty of what the school year is going to look like for us. So things to just kind of be mindful of going into the school year. So some signs to watch out for in kids, and I'll go into a little more detail by kind of like age level or group level. Regressive behaviors, we might see kids kind of slide back a little on their academic skills, or maybe even their ready to learn skills or behavioral skills. Changes in appetite, sleep issues is huge. I don't know about you guys. For those of you maybe in the secondary level, when I was trying to meet with kids in the spring, it was really hard to get them connected via Zoom or something like that until during the morning time because they're sleeping in till noon or 1 o'clock. And they really need that time because the better kids sleep, we know that the research says that the more sleep they get, the better, the happier they are, the less likely they are to be depressed, less at risk for suicide ideation and things like that. So sleep issues is huge, shifting in moods, just the reassurance, that seeking that reassurance from you guys and from caregivers about, is everything going to be okay? Like, are we going to be safe? Especially for your younger ones, they'll be a little bit more clingy than maybe usual. You may have seen a little bit of this with your own children if you have your own young children. We might see our teens being a little bit more withdrawn. And certainly somatic complaints will be a huge one to kind of look out for. The complaints of I have a headache or I have a stomach ache and all those kinds of things that kids will do when they're distressed and maybe not able to articulate emotionally what's going on with them. And then trouble focusing and acting out. So these are just some things to kind of be on the lookout for. So I'm going to review some common behaviors and then some thoughts and feelings that our elementary kids may be experiencing, and then as well as our junior high and high school kids may be experiencing. And you'll see that there's a reference there to nasponline.org. That's the National Association for School Psychologists website. They have a ton of resources with regard to crisis response, COVID-19, and how we can support our students, whether we're educators or parents. So there's lots of really good information there. As far as behaviors that we'll see in our young elementary kids, guilt, traumatic play, maybe they're reenacting things that they've heard or seen on TV, retelling of the traumatic event, talking about the number of people in the country or in our area who have passed away. Again, sleep difficulties, having outbursts and anger and aggressiveness. And that could be, like them not being able to really express how they're feeling, but just a way of trying to express their agitation or their uncomfortableness with what's going on and the uncertainty of everything. Sadness and crying, back to that separation anxiety. We might end up seeing that more a little bit once we get back to on-site instruction. Because virtually they'll likely still be at home with a parent, just depending on the age, or a caregiver, just depending on their age. So we might see that a little bit later once we return to on-site instruction. Next slide. Oh, thanks. And then thoughts and feelings for our elementary kids: difficulty concentrating, paying attention, being able to recall information and difficulties with that. Their organizational skills. Some of that may have gone out the window because they haven't had that structure in your guys' classrooms. We'll see that that's an issue that comes up with our high schoolers too. And then just kind of being overall confused about what the routine is. And just like we're confused trying to navigate this whole virtual world, we'll definitely see that with our students too. And they're going to be feeling the same way. Next. Okay, so then in our high school students, you'll see some of the similarities here. Definitely still some guilt and anger and aggression. We might see our teenagers withdrawing, maybe possibly a little bit more than usual. I know sometimes it's pretty typical for teens to kind of retreat to their rooms and things like that, but just being mindful of kids being a little bit more withdrawn. They haven't seen their friends as much as they would have liked, just like we haven't been able to have that social interaction. Depression and anxiety are things that we're going to be seeing in our secondary age kids as well. And then suicidal ideation and substance abuse are definitely things we want to keep an ear out for. But just know, if these things come up, if a kid ends up sharing something like this with you, whether in an essay or during a chat, if you're having like a one-on-one check-in because you notice that so-and-so is late to the meeting, and they looked down, and I know it's hard to tell in a virtual platform to watch all these kinds of behaviors, but if you kind of see a difference and then ask a little bit about it, and you find out that the child is having some thoughts of self-harm or things like that, do not hesitate to reach out to your administrator or school psychologist immediately, so that way we can provide that intervention and support to be able to assist you, and you not feeling like you have to like ask anything that you're not comfortable. We are trained to do that for you, kind of like John referenced earlier, that you're not alone in this. So we just want to kind of look out for those things and then seek immediate help if you start to see any of those kind of red flags. Next. And then just like our younger kids, our secondary age students are also having difficulties concentrating, paying attention, recalling information, difficulty with organization, which I know for a lot of high schoolers, we got to get them going with their planners and things like that. And junior high, we start to build those, actually, and even elementary, late elementary, we start with planners and things like that, trying to get back into that organization. That's going to be a little bit difficult. And then the school avoidance piece too. I know in the spring it was kind of tough to get kids to join meetings that teachers were having or sessions that they were supposed to have with me and those kinds of things, and to just be mindful of that. And I know our district, and from what the state is telling us as far as having to make sure that we are taking attendance and things like that. So hopefully this will be minimized, but we'll still want to be on the lookout for those kiddos who are continually habitually being absent. So that way we can intervene and support them, kind of find out a little bit more about what may be going on. and then just the overall confusion with things, with the uncertainty of what's going on and what school's going to look like and what their life is looking like, and then just different intrusive thoughts. Maybe we have students who are an 8th grader and they have a 4th grade sibling and a 2nd grade sibling that they are trying to monitor their Zoom meetings as well and then feed them lunch. And so they're trying to navigate taking care of younger siblings while, their single parent is trying to hold a job to keep their family support. So all these different things that they're kind of bringing to the classroom. Thanks. And I think it's Quinette.
Yes, thanks, Jill. So we've talked a lot about what some of those tier 1 supports are, the importance of them. Jill really hit on the behaviors that you might see from some of the students, or things that you can try to be mindful of as best you can in the Zoom environment. And then even once we transition back to on-site learning, the key piece and what we love about this graphic is we know that in order for students to be available for learning, their basic needs have to be met. And it really starts with that communication and that connectiveness. And there's such a high level of stress that all of us, kids and adults, have been experiencing, that the more that we can facilitate and develop that social connectiveness, the lower the stress goes down. We know that. The more we can connect with people, our stress levels go down. So Tammy's going to share in just a little bit just some of those ways that you can build that connectiveness in your classroom and some different ideas. We saw, early on with John presenting just that tier 1, what that looks like in the classroom for all of your students, and just some of those resources as well. Once we build that connectiveness, then we're going to build in the trust. Then we're further establishing those relationships, and now we're really available to learn. This link that's in this picture, this article, the researcher really highlights ways that teachers can bring these things into the classroom. And so when you have the opportunity to start looking at all of the resources that we're sharing, definitely read this article, because it's just another tool and more ideas about, okay, how do I build that connective? How can I build the trust? And a lot of that is going to come from establishing those routines and establishing just the framework of what is my classroom going to look like. Go to the next slide. So setting the classroom stage. You first want to lead with empathy, and we know that empathy is understanding where someone is coming from, right? So we all have been experiencing this pandemic differently. We all have different thoughts around wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, staying home, not staying home. Our students are going to have those same feelings based on their own home environment and based on just what their parents and other adults in their lives might be sharing. So it's really important that as you're starting to set that classroom stage, that you are leading your students with empathy and understanding that every single student in your class is going to have a different experience with this pandemic that we are all experiencing. So as you're starting to create and establish those norms, which we know also reduces stress, when we know what to expect, we're not as stressed, it's important to get the students buy-in. That also is going to start to develop that relationship. So we want the consistent expectations, but we have to also be understanding with the circumstance. So you might the first week or first couple days with your students establish what is going to be our process for raising our hand. Are we actually going to raise our hand? Or are we going to use the raise hand emoji? When you like what someone has said, are you going to use the thumbs up emoji that's built into Zoom? Or are we going to give a verbal thumbs up? It's also important that, we talk a lot about modeling behavior, and that's very easy to do when we are face-to-face, but on Zooms, you can still model the behavior that you want of your students. You can sit up, smiling at each other, being mindful of if another student is talking, you're not talking, and just kind of reiterating those things to your students and then modeling what that might look like. Establishing, it's very important, especially during this time where it's so stressful, that we are integrating those neuroeducation breaks, so brain breaks, right? But what's going to be the process for the brain break? And so establishing, again, as a class team, as a class family, when do we want to take breaks? You know, for elementary school, it might be 10 minutes in. For high school, maybe you can go 20 minutes in, and then you stand up and you do some sort of brain break. Tammy is going to highlight within the district, schools have adopted either Positivity Project or Second Step or Character Strong. And so depending on what your school site has adopted, there's going to be tools that are embedded as well that you can integrate into your lessons and into your planning. But again, even just when you talk about setting the stage and kind of that opening week, really having students to know what is to be expected. You know, every morning, are they going to come in and hear music playing? Are they going to have a question of, you know, how's your day going, or things like that? And those are, as you are trying to watch for those behaviors that Jill had mentioned, that's one way to be able to do that, is during that morning when they're first coming in, just kind of looking at those nonverbals, establishing even if they have a bad connection, you know, unstable internet connection. We've all seen that throughout our times doing Zooms. Letting the students know ahead of time, hey, this might happen, and if it happens, it is okay. Here's what you're going to do. I think it's also important as we talk about building character and resiliency, which we know we do in schools. That's one of our goals, is to build character and resilience amongst our students. This is one of those times that we can do it. We can show them, guys, your internet's going to go down. It is going to be okay, and here's our workaround for that. Even explaining to parents what the workaround is, because they're going to be stressed out about this new environment. And through all of that, we're teaching our kids how to be more resilient. We're teaching them how to, you know, go with the flow, or not get bogged down on things that we weren't prepared for. Again, all of this is to really lower that student stress. It's also going to lower your stress, and it just creates an environment to which the student can really learn and can access everything that you are trying to put out in front of them. I think that's it.
Thank you, Quinette. Okay, everybody. So how do we build character and build resilience in our students while we're in this distance learning model, and then in the future when we hopefully can return back to school? Our district has adopted 3 different platforms or curriculums, if you might say it that way, that are built around that Tier 1 social emotional learning and relationship building between teachers and peers, teachers, students, and peers to peers. One of them is called Character Strong. Some of you might be already implementing this at your school site, and so you'd want to check if you haven't heard of these, or you don't know what your focus is going to be or your initiative, check with your administrators or your teams and find out, what are we doing? Are we doing Character Strong? Are we doing Positivity Project? Are we doing Second Step? I'm going to show you some things, because if you all are like me, you're a planner and you want to know, what can I implement the first day, or what are some ideas I could do? If I know it's Character Strong, but I haven't received the training yet, what would I like to do the first day? Or the first week for that matter. And so we're going to go through a couple of those. I have to get out of the present mode, because I'm going to show you some things that are hyperlinks and that you will be able to access. Character Strong, Positivity Project, and Second Step in this distance learning model in the spring and going forward have allowed us to have lots of resources free of charge. And what's better than that? So I wanted to kind of show you some of these links. So this is Character Strong 30 Days of Kindness. I actually was, as a parent, experienced this during the spring, and these were great activities. What you're going to do on this page is you're going to click here to sign up. Click on the hyperlink. And what this 30 Days of Kindness does, I mean, this would be, if I was in the classroom right now, this would probably be what I would do. And this can go K-12, just to kind of get my feet wet. This is talking about different aspects of kindness and character building. And you actually have a kindness journal as well as some socially shareable images and videos. And so it can be embedded into Google Classroom and pushed out that way. You download the videos. So here's a video, and I wanted to let you know that I've been working with technology to make sure that all of these videos are whitelisted. And so just know that that piece is being addressed through technology. And but these are the pieces that I think are very critical, is that it actually gives the student a way to track their progress. What did I do the different kindness activities for 10 minutes? And did I do these activities within my classroom as it was assigned? This is a copy of the actual downloadable image that could be put into Google Classroom. And it just gives them kind of something to do. So this one's making a video about reminiscing. So this is day 30, but you're reminiscing over the last 30 days. What's something that made you smile? What's a person that made you smile? And then children are given a choice. It's really important and powerful when children are given a choice. They could share it out, or they could keep it to themselves for, save it for a rainy day, so to speak. And then along with that, here comes where I get excited about the academic piece, where they're actually journaling about it. So they can use the prompt and it's all on one page, and they can actually journal about whatever the prompt was. So that's Character Strong. I've got to close all of these.
Jamie, there's a question that I'm wondering if you can answer as you're going through each thing.
Sure.
Are the kindness videos, do they caption for our students that might be deaf or hard of hearing?
Since they are YouTube videos, I believe that capability is there, but I'm not sure. I will get back to whoever that is. So Quinette, if you would write their names down, and then I will find out. Great question. Like I said, these are broken up into K2, 3, 5, and then 6 through 12. And I just wanted to show you, I won't go through each one in the matter of time, but for kindergarten through 2nd grade, here's some really easy things that you can get into your lessons right away if Character Strong is the vision for your school site. Here's a video that the students watch, and then here are debriefing questions that you could do as a class during a morning meeting, making some sort of connection with them, maybe during the attendance time. Because as you all know, with the assembly bill that came out with our distance learning guidance, the governor is requesting that we meet with students every single day and we take attendance, and that there's some sort of peer-to-peer interaction. And so this would be a good platform to check that box and make sure that we are meeting the needs of the students and their social emotional learning. So just in the interest of time, I will show you where these documents are, but I'm not going to open each of them because we wanted to kind of open it up at the end and see if we could get some questions answered for you all. So you would just click on the video, and here's questions, and here's a video, and then there's more questions. And it's exactly the same way for the 3-5 example and for the 6-12 example. Okay, so that's Character Strong. Positivity Project, if this is the vision and the initiative for your school site or area, there are Positivity Project character cards that you can open up. The link is right here. So whenever you see these hyperlinks, I usually put a reminder that'll say, be sure to click this link, but that's what it means. So you just click on that link. And then this is exciting to me because if I was at a Positivity Project school, this would be something I would easily access. So when you look at this Positivity Project resource, here's a highlighted link. It goes to the 2021 calendar. And even though our school district starts earlier, and some of the schools or some of the calendar dates on here are, later in September, when people start after Labor Day, you could access, say, for example, the Curiosity slide deck. So let me show you what that looks like. So if you go back to this resource down here, this is direct instructions on how to access what I'm showing you right now. So if you don't remember it, just refer back to this. But if you click in here under resources, you would click on slide presentation, what character strength you wanted to do, curiosity, and you could even drill it down to grade level. So I was a 5th grade teacher. Here's the slide presentation. And boom, it is done for you. It's 5 days of it. So it gives you a quote about if you had this character trait of curiosity. It gives a little video, and then there are some questions to follow up with students. So those are the resources for Positivity Project. And then second step, it's typically used in our district as a tier 2 intervention, but they do have a lot of good resources that could be embedded into a Zoom classroom and digitally processed information for students. But the other good thing about the second step resource is that it does have a parent component. And so it talks about activities. If a parent wanted to work with their student, there might be some suggestions in that document as well. Okay, so you may say, Tammy, okay, I understand I have to do all of that, but what does this really look like? So you showed me those things that I'm going to get training on next week. But what could I do like right now? Like I'm trying to do my slide decks. Well, here, this is an article. This is a link to an article of a blogger that I follow. And you could actually link this. And here are some examples of the how. One of the things that I think is very powerful, and it was mentioned earlier by David, is that as students are entering the Zoom, mention their name. Hi, John. I'm glad that you're here. Hi, Jill. I'm glad you're here today. Or how's your cat today? Because, you know, there's always a cat that walks through the Zoom. So, you know, doing something that shows that you were paying attention to the student and what is personal to that student. Doing those kind of things. So here are some activities. They're not activities, but actually examples of the how. And it came up in our last presentation. A teacher said, how am I going to do the all about me that I used to do, you know, at the beginning of school without it being actually, you know, in person? Well, you could have students create an all about them slide. And you could create an all about you slide, and you could have the students share it. That's the peer interaction. That could be an attendance maker, and that could all be done through Google Classroom. So those are some ideas too, but if you want 33 more ideas, they're there. And here's a couple more things to look at. So distance learning class reward ideas. So that's another thing. So once you set up your clear, consistent expectations and norms, like how are we going to reward students? So there's a lot of different examples, you know, a dress up day. So they could come to the Zoom dressed up as something, you know, something like that. You could do a digital dance party, etc. For those of us that are more technologically advanced, this was shared with me. This is not from our district, but this is actually a Google form. And I absolutely love this because this could go between student and teacher only, right? So we want to make sure that we're keeping their privacy intact. But look at this little grid. So choose which face you're feeling right now, right? 5 meaning the best, 1 meaning the worst. And you could reword these things, but then they click on which one and they choose which one. And then why did you pick that emotion? So this kind of thing could go back and forth between teacher and student and would help you get a really good gauge on how are my students doing, right? And then this is an example right here of online expectations and norms. I wanted to mention also that curriculum and instruction will be having some more social emotional learning examples coming out in the Friday update, and that will be going on an ongoing basis. Please do not be overwhelmed by this. We are here to help you. If you need for me to walk through any of those resources again, please reach out to me or stick around afterwards and we can answer questions. I think David.
David, you're on mute.
I was on mute telling him to unmute.
So somebody hopefully read lips just now. Sorry about that. So there was a lot of information there, a lot of resources. I know we went really quick. You guys have this resource here with the links. We want to thank you. And as we come around full circle, before we finish up here, want to remind you of the importance of self-care. So what we're hoping right now is you guys are going to just blow up this chat box with 64 replies as we finish up the last few slides. So you can start now. Share with everyone one thing that you do to take care of yourself. What is a part of your daily ongoing self-care? So I'll let you guys do that while John wraps it up with the last couple of slides.
John, you're muted.
I hope that you found this helpful. There is a lot more information that's out there. Keep in touch with your psychologists, your site administrators, in terms of how to access some of these resources. This is obviously a very challenging time for both kids and adults. And hopefully some of the things that we've learned over the previous 4 or 5 months and the next few months, or however long we are in distance learning, will be something that we can use to be better moving forward. I would want to repeat what David has said on a couple of occasions, is as we are in this model, the importance of self-care has never been higher. And so as we are looking out for our students and others, it's really critical that we look out for ourselves as well, and doing things that bring us some enjoyment as we navigate through this more than interesting time. So we wish you the best, as it is now 2 o'clock and our weekends is getting closer and closer. The 5 of us will stick around if there are any individual questions. And so thanks again for coming, and we wish you all the best.